Good morning, and I'd like to welcome everyone and call to order this joint hearing this morning of the Transportation and Public Assets Subcommittee along with the Government Operations Subcommittee. Welcome, everyone. The topic of our hearing today is D.C. Metro. Is there a safety gap? With that question, we will address the matter of the recent unfortunate death and incident we had in the D.C. Metro, and welcome our witnesses this morning. We'll introduce you shortly. The order of business will be first, I'll start with an opening statement, then we'll go to the acting ranking member, and I understand Ms. Duckworth is to be back with us soon, and proud mother of a new baby girl. And then we'll go to Mr. Meadows, who chairs the Government Operations Subcommittee, and then Mr. DeSaldinaire, who will recognize for his statement, and other members. So with that, without objection, the Chair is authorized to declare a recess at any time. I also would ask unanimous consent that our colleagues from the 8th and 10th Districts of Virginia, Mr. Don Beer and Ms. Congresswoman Barbara Comstock, be allowed to fully participate in today's hearing without objection so ordered. And with that, let me start with my opening statement, and then we'll proceed. So again, I thank you for coming. This is an important hearing, and both of the subcommittees have jurisdiction. I'm fortunate to chair a new Transportation Oversight Subcommittee, and working with Mr. Meadows and Mr. Conley and others. So this is a day that we find ourselves about 1 month ago yesterday when a Washington native, Carol Glover, tragically lost her life as she and hundreds of other passengers on a Yellow Line train, metro train, were stuck for over an hour in a smoke-filled tunnel. And that was just 100 yards away from the L'Enfant Metro Plaza station. More than 80 people were hospitalized in that instance. Now, we do have pretty broad authority, but specifically, Congress does have a unique relationship with the District of Columbia, and this committee specifically has a unique responsibility to the District of Columbia as far as oversight and responsibility to really monitor incidents like this in a transit system within that serves not only the region but also our nation's capital, and receives a very significant amount of Federal dollars. The investigation into this incident is still underway, but any loss of life and an incident like this certainly deserves our attention and our review, particularly at this point, especially considering some of the alarming facts that have come to light in just the last 30 days since the incident. There are some things that we know and some things we're learning. I brought this paper, headline of yesterday's paper, NTSB, Metro fans set wrong. That was kind of startling for all of us to learn yesterday. We know, and we've heard, the District has reviewed some of this incident also, but we know that there were some very serious communication issues between Metro and first responders. We also know that radios used by D.C. fire and emergency service workers only worked sporadically and that firefighters had to use an alternative method of communication, such as runners and personal cell phones. We also know that it took over an hour to evacuate all of the passengers off the train. And we know, of course, I think everyone who's looked at this to date has said that the response could and should have been much better. Today's hearing's not just about the January 12th incident, but rather how our regional transportation system responsible, and that agency, and numerous agency and area responders can do a better job, be prepared to do a better job, and how to react better in emergencies. It's been nearly 14 years since the terrorist attack of September 11th. Since then, the National Capital Region alone has received over $1 billion in federal taxpayer money and FEMA preparedness grant programs. In fact, the authority here has received over $200 million in Homeland Security grants. These are significant amounts of money to try to make us prepared. That was it was a loss of life, but it was a small incident, and what we might have is this area again being a target of a terrorist act and face a much more horrific incident. Yet firefighters were unable to get timely and accurate information about the emergency, and were unable to use their life-saving communications equipment in the tunnel and also in the station. Metro provides rescue training for regional first responders, and yet at the D.C. City Council hearing last week, we learned that only 100 D.C. firefighters attended this training session last year. Something's wrong when you have those numbers. According to D.C. Fire, requests were made to Metro to cease all Metro rail traffic in and around L'Enfant Station so that the first responders had assurances they were safe from any train traffic. NTSB is investigating some of these allegations, and also that this request initially fell on deaf ears. Had an opportunity yesterday to go down, we'll hear from NTSB representative, and visit NTSB. If you haven't done that, members, I highly recommend it. It only took about an hour, but you'll see some of the incredible work. We actually looked at some of the equipment and some of the damaged rail items that were taken from that site that they are now inspecting. But the NTSB does a great job, and again, I encourage members to go down and see firsthand what they're doing. D.C. Metro is, in fact, one of the most important transit systems in the country. It serves our nation's capital. It not only serves millions of federal employees and daily commuters, but it also helps our people from around the United States. Some of them are our constituents. People from around the world come to this, our capital city, and they should have a safe, reliable system. In fact, I checked this morning, and what are the figures here? We've had about 750,000 people a day use the Metro system. Over 200 million people a year use the Metro system. It's one of the most active in the nation and in any metropolitan area. And that anyone who rides Metro should know it's safe and secure, and it's our responsibility to follow up on that. Well, we're all pleased about the urgent recommendations and steps that NTSB has already made, and some of the steps the city has taken to deal with the issues and problems that have been brought to light. There appears to be some common sense solutions to all of these problems, and also just the way we deal with Metro. This morning, I keep in my desk drawer some of my Metro cards. This is the one from New York City. I just pulled these out this morning. This is the one from here in the district. Okay. The back of the D.C. Metro card says "No more first," and it talks a little bit. Now, this is fine print. I can barely read it, and I have some pretty good eyesight for my age.
Can I help you, Mr.
No, I'm telling you, I can read it. It talks about you must produce this card for the police. It talks about a consumer hotline, I guess you can call. This is the D.C. card. Again, I just pulled these out of my drawer today. Here's the New York Metro card in huge bold letters, subway emergency instructions, and then it tells you a little bit. But I spoke to common sense, and I guess emergency information on something like that is something we could even look at. So again, I think this is a hearing to find out what went wrong and what we can do to make things right. Finally, as far as our committee and the Transportation Committee, I recall that we had done something in the MAP 21 bill, and following, and this is in a report we're releasing today, following the 2009 Fort Totten collision, NTSB called for enhanced statutory authority to get the authority for from FTA because the agency was barred from performing adequate safety oversight on Washington Metro. With the enactment of MAP 21, our transportation bill, on July 6, 2012, FTA was granted authority, that's 3 years ago. They were granted authority to oversee the safety of public transportation throughout the United States and also in Metro. So far, FTA has not made any rules, not a single rule, to increase safety of public transportation. However, last week, FTA announced that it will audit Washington Metro safety procedures. So some things have been done to try to address this by Congress. Agencies were given authority to act, and they did not act. So that's a concern, and we'll address that. So again, I hope this hearing can make an incident like this, again, a very sad memory, but something we can do better and learn from. So again, I appreciate you all participating. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses. Let me turn to Ranking Member Mr. Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to you and Mr. Meadows for so graciously agreeing to have this hearing. It's of great import to all of us, but particularly all of us who represent parts of the National Capital Region, and we really appreciate your willingness to do this as, for Mark and me, our first subcommittee hearing, so thank you. On January 12th, public confidence in Metro was shaken once again by a deadly electrical arcing and smoke accident near L'Enfant Plaza that tragically took the life of one of our constituents in Virginia, Ms. Carol Glover. On behalf of every member of this committee I know, we offer our deepest condolences to her family and our sincere gratitude to the brave first responders and Good Samaritans, one of whom is with us today, who acted courageously to help the passengers stuck on the smoke-filled Metro car, train number 302. We also want to take a moment to thank Mr. Jonathan Rogers, one of our witnesses today, who demonstrated tremendous courage and coolness under difficult circumstances in braving the deadly smoke to tend to his fellow passengers and to administer CPR to try and revive Mrs. Glover. We owe it to Mrs. Glover's family and all of the passengers on that train to do everything in our power not only to fully uncover why this accident took place, but to also integrate all lessons learned to ensure it never happens again. The Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority was established by an interstate compact in 1967 to plan, develop, build, finance, and operate a balanced regional transportation system in the national capital area. And one does need to take a moment here so that the narrative isn't only about what goes wrong. From nothing, this region built the second most utilized transit system in America and served especially the Federal Government, the biggest customer, the most dependent, and the biggest beneficiary of Metro every day. When Metro doesn't function, the Federal Government has to shut down. And the Federal Government is the only entity not at the table providing an operating subsidy. The Chairman mentioned that there is substantial financial support from the Federal Government. That's true, I guess, on the capital side. There's a 10-year plan. The Federal Government provides $150 million a year, and we're very grateful to especially Mr. Mica for his support when he was Chairman of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee in that program. My predecessor, Tom Davis, in this job, was instrumental in authoring that legislation. But that's only for capital. There's not a dime of Federal money that goes into operating subsidies. So the subsidies are borne entirely by the local jurisdictions, even though, as the Chairman points out, this is the nation's capital subway, and we bear the burden of 12 million visitors who come to visit their nation's capital every year. And it is somehow the responsibility and burden of the localities to absorb that without any Federal help. And that's a fact. I think we have to keep that in mind. The issue before us today is not really about resources, though it's always about resources. Metro is truly America's subway, as I said. Similar to all mass transit systems, it's not impervious to wear and tear brought on by time and millions of those riders. Prior to the incident last month, the horrific 2009 Fort Totten collision that killed 9 passengers and injured 80 more was a startling wake-up call that our America's subway was aging and need of major improvements. In the aftermath of that, the National Transportation Safety Board found that the 1970s era 1000 series cars were susceptible to telescoping during a collision, which resulted in the loss of lives when those trains collapsed like an accordion. As we discussed the errors and failures in the most recent arcing incident at L'Enfant Plaza, it is vital that we not lose sight of the fact that WMATA faces zero-sum decisions with limited funding, and in many respects devoting the majority of its focus, time, and funding toward retiring those antiquated 1000 series cars, which Congress asked them to do. It was a logical, strategic decision when one considers that Metro is a multi-billion-dollar system that only benefits from millions in Federal assistance. I want to commend the NTSB for taking swift action earlier this week and issuing 6 urgent recommendations aimed at ensuring Metro Rail's ventilation system is in good working order and that transit systems across the nation are learning from the January 12th tragedy. However, one remains profoundly disappointed that the NTSB recommendations were even necessary. I'm stunned that WMATA even needed an independent Federal agency to remind it that the Metro Rail system must have a ventilation system in good working order. The overwhelming majority of the Metro system in Washington, D.C. is underground. It's not a new fact that we might have eventualities we have to respond to. Regrettably, our concerns have not been alleviated in preparing for this hearing. It was with great consternation, for example, that I reviewed a September 2007 NTSB accident report on the derailment of the Chicago Transit Authority train number 220. It was very troubling to discover on page 49 of that report the following recommendation issued to the FTA. Inform all rail transit agencies about the circumstance of the July 11, 2006 CTA subway accident and urge them to examine and improve as necessary their ability to communicate with passengers, perform emergency evacuations from tunnel systems. Sound familiar? Including the ability, it goes on, to 1, identify the exact location of a train, locate a specific call box, and remove smoke from their tunnel systems. That was guidance issued in 2007 to all transit agencies, including Metro. One is very frustrated that WMATA appears to have possessed the requisite information to understand the real-world consequences of malfunctioning ventilation systems and the need to examine its ability to remove smoke from Metro tunnel systems, and yet appears not to have taken meaningful action over the past 7 years with respect to this important FDA guidance. We certainly want to examine that in this hearing. There is a troubling pattern where WMATA and D.C. Fire and Rescue appear to be repeating past mistakes. For example, in 2007, 2 NTSB members expressed serious concerns that it took more than an hour to fully evacuate passengers from 2 Metro Rail train cars after a derailment near Mount Vernon Station. We knew about this as a problem years ago. What have we done to make sure our passengers are safe? And that's the purpose of today's hearing, and we want to get at the truth. And so I appreciate very much our panelists being here today and our 2 chairmen for their graciousness in holding this hearing. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Connolly. Let me now recognize Chairman Meadows of the Government Operations Subcommittee. Welcome, and I guess your first hearing. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to personally start out by thanking the ranking member, my good friend Jerry Connolly. This particular incident, we've already had a number of conversations about. Both of us were able to meet with the mayor yesterday, and I think it sets a good foundation for hopefully getting to the bottom of not only this problem, but certainly some of the comments that continue to get made on a regular basis by the over 200 million riders that we have annually on the Metro system. And so I'm going to deviate from my prepared remarks, primarily because the chairman and the ranking member have given you a lot of statistics, and all of those, in the effort of not being redundant, I will not go into those. But first and foremost, today's hearing is really about ensuring that the Metro riders in our nation's capital and the surrounding areas are as safe as possible. And as I mentioned, the D.C. metro area covers some 200 million riders annually. These are not just the hardworking citizens, although they are predominantly the ones who ride it each and every day. They're the ones that know where to go, which escalators to avoid, how to get down. As a neophyte to that, yesterday evening I went down, and I know that if you are not skilled, you get run over. And so as I went down and actually participated in what millions of people do each and every week, I was able to look at it with a fresh eye and say, well, why is this happening? Why is that happening? Why, shouldn't we have more money? You got 2 escalators coming up and 1 going down. Shouldn't it be the other way at this particular time of the day? And they, the people I was with said, well, at least your escalators are working. And so as we see that, I can say that really more that we need to use this safety event as a wake-up call, not just because of the tragic nature of the safety event, but also to go further in terms of what we need to do to make sure that it is properly funded, properly maintained, and properly operated each and every day. So I'm going to close with this, because I put out on Twitter, said, give me your recommendations. What do you think? I didn't realize how active the Twitter response would be. And so I'm going to read 3 Twitter responses, and this is kind of indicative of a plethora of others that we had. But I had one that says, I've been commuting for 16 years. federal worker, in parentheses, lack of accountability, poor management, info, general attitude of not caring. This is from a customer. I got another one who said, increased fares for decreased service, fires on train. This was the one that concerned Twitter being more reliable for info than WMATA. And the third one I'll read is, thanks for asking. Main problems, fare hikes without improvements in service, safety hazards, and a lack of communication. Now, these are not my words. They're really hundreds of responses that would be very close to this. And so what I hope that we can do today is hear from the experts. That's why you're here, the experts, to give us different perspectives, not only on safety, but what we need to go be doing going forward. I thank each of you for being here. I thank you for your attention to this matter, and I will yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Meadows. And now welcome and also recognize today our acting ranking member. Nice way to start off, Mr. DeSaltinaire. And you're from California?
San Francisco Bay Area.
Great. Well, welcome and congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to thank Chairman Meadows and the ranking member, Mr. Connolly, as well. And I want to share my condolences and concern for the entire metropolitan area from 3,000 miles away in California. I also wanted to thank NTSB for hosting me and others yesterday. It was very informative, and I'm also thankful of your reputation, which is well-deserved. And to Mr. Rogers, I want to add my thanks to you. You exemplified Tocqueville's observation about Americans many years ago, that the genius of America resides in the simple truth that you can expect extraordinary things from ordinary Americans. So thank you for being here. As we all know, on January 12, 2015, an electrical breaker on one section of the third rail tripped. A yellow line train stopped in that tunnel, and the cars filled with smoke near the L'Enfant Plaza metro station. This incident unfortunately resulted in the death of a passenger and hospitalization of more than 80 riders. It raises serious concerns about maintenance, oversight, and safety, particularly for the many commuters in the D.C. metropolitan area, which relies so seriously for this infrastructure every day. While this incident occurred in the D.C. area, it raises significant concerns about federal oversight of mass transit systems nationwide. The Federal Transit Administration is charged with issuing safety regulations and a national safety plan, but has failed to do so. And as a side, in the report in our binder, it's signed by Deputy FTA Administrator, who I used to work with, I should say, Freudian slip, when I served 10 years on the Bay Area's Metropolitan Planning Organization, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, and I know she's a consummate professional, Therese McMillan. In addition, it appears that recommendations made to Metro by the National Transportation Safety Board after previous safety incidents were not fully implemented. So just to be clear, Metro has deficiencies to answer for, but so do federal regulators. As Mr. Connolly said, Metro is America's subway, and this has national implications. For those of us who have fought for increased transit in regional and local and state government and believe that Americans, particularly younger Americans, as we become even more urbanized, need choices when it comes to transportation, and in congested areas like Washington, D.C., New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and San Francisco, we want to give commuters choices, and that requires reliability and safety of all our transit operators. In California, we understand the need for safety for riders and workers in transit facilities. The Bay Area Rapid Transit Agency is a large transit system, although not nearly as large as Metro, serving 450,000 riders on average every day. When a tragic accident occurred in October 2013, when two BART workers were killed, we started a thorough investigation with NTCSB and with state officials, and we are still examining particularly the safety culture that led to that incident. I look forward to fully examining why there was a delay in evacuating passengers, why the ventilation system was not working properly, and why first responders were unable to open the train doors or communicate on their radios. I also want to fully understand the specific causes of this incident and do what is necessary to ensure that, as Mr. Connolly says, this never happens again. I look forward to hearing from the witnesses and finding answers to these questions. I appreciate the committee's interest in this important issue, and thank the chairs once again for hosting this important hearing. And then lastly, I have particular concerns over safety culture. We know that safety culture is not some unimaginable, hard-to-define issue, whether it's in hospitals or refineries, chemical plants, or manufacturing facilities, or any government agency. It's real, it's palatable, and I will say I'm very concerned about the comments represented by the rank-and-file workers, and I look forward to asking questions of the governing board and the representative of the rank-and-file workers in my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. Thank you. And other members seek recognition. Ms. Norton, gentlelady from the district, is recognized.
Chairman Micah, just a word first of thanks to my good friends, Mr. Micah and Mr. Meadows. You will note that this is a joint hearing, and I do believe that that indicates the importance of this hearing to the Federal Government. I mean, you can call this America's subway all you want to. For all intents and purposes, it's a Federal subway because it's essential to the functioning of the operations of the Federal Government. And yes, it is essential to our constituents here in the National Capital Region. There have already been, and I want to thank the multiple parties for the hearings, the briefings and hearings in the Congress and in the district, and early reports from MTSB. And we see WMATA already beginning before the report is done to make corrections, and we are enormously grateful for that. And I do believe it restores or helps to restore confidence in the system. I simply want to say that after the great tragedy of 2009, when we lost 9 residents, all 9 of them lived in the District of Columbia, it doesn't matter where they lived. This time we lost 1 resident who lived in Virginia. It's a personal tragedy. It's a regional tragedy. The reason that this tragedy bothers me so much is if we look back to 2009, we can trace that tragedy to a rather hard to, even hard to understand technical problem with the equipment. Think about the cause of this tragedy. Think about the fact that we're dealing with what everybody would regard as the ABCs of running a common carrier. Being able to communicate from the surface to underground. Making sure that the smoke goes the right rather than the wrong way. My friends, I can think of nothing worse than being smoked to death underground in a subway. That's what happened here. The communication problems were perfectly foreseeable. Getting the fans working in the right way was what everybody assumed was happening all the time. So my concern for this tragedy is even greater than the 2009 tragedy. Greater because I think we had foreseeable problems and because something went cruelly wrong here. That's why I'm so grateful to my good friends for calling a hearing, which I think is perfectly appropriate, because this is a system that the Federal Government itself depends upon. And thank you again, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Do other members seek recognition? Okay. Since there are no other members seeking, did you, Mr. Okay. I'll wait for questions. Very good. Then what we'll do now is we'll turn to our witnesses, and members will have 5 legislative days who'd like to submit a written statement without objection so ordered. Let me first introduce and welcome our witnesses. First, welcome Jonathan Rogers, a Metro passenger who was present on January 12th at the Metro incident. The Honorable Christopher Hart, Acting Chairman of the National Safety Transportation Board. Mr. Mort Downing, and he is the Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Washington Metropolitan Transit Authority. And he's also, I understand, accompanied by a panel of experts behind him. And we have Mr. Edward Mills, Assistant Fire Chief, who's in charge of operations of the D.C. Fire Emergency Medical Rescue Services Department, and Ms. Jackie Jeter, and she is President and Business Agent for Amalgamated Transit Union Local 689. Let me see, the ones that are accompanying Mr. Downey. Mr. Downey, are they going to also be called on to? Okay.
Turn it on, Mark.
Only if something comes up
And
that's
can you
technical and I
identify
need help. Yes.
them?
Yes, I'm accompanied by Chief Ron Pavlik, the Chief of the Metropolitan Transit Police Department, and also Jack Requa, who is the Interim General Manager of Metro, and they are sitting behind me.
Okay. So what we'll do, this is an Investigations and Oversight Subcommittee of Congress, a joint hearing today, and we do swear in all of our witnesses. I'd ask the gentlemen that were just identified to also stand. Our witnesses to stand, please. Be sworn in. Can you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before these two subcommittees of Congress is the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Let the record reflect that all of the witnesses answered in the affirmative. So with that, we got some new witnesses, particularly Mr. Rogers, to testifying in Congress and this panel. We tried to ask you to limit your remarks to about 5 minutes. If you have additional information or some background you'd like to be made a part of the record, just a simple request through the Chair, and we'll put it in the record. With that, again, we welcome Mr. Jonathan Rogers, who was a passenger on that fateful day. Welcome, sir, and you are recognized. You'll have to turn your mic on and pull it up as close as you can, Mr. Rogers.
Is that good? Thank you. Honorable members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Jonathan Rogers, and I've been a resident of the District of Columbia for 7 years. On the afternoon of January 12, 2015, I departed a conference at the Walter E. Washington Convention Center to return to my office in the Navy Yard neighborhood of Washington, D.C. At the Mount Vernon Square Convention Center station, I mistakenly boarded a Yellow Line train headed for Huntington. I boarded the second car from the front of the train, and according to WMATA's usage history report for my Smart Trip card, I entered the station at exactly 3 p.m. I can accurately confirm the timeline of events that followed with electronic timestamps from smartphone pictures I took that afternoon. By coincidence, I took my first photo at 3:11 p.m., shortly before the train reached L'Enfant Plaza, and that photo depicts a normal, safe experience on the Metro train. After the train departed the L'Enfant Plaza station, we entered a tunnel, and after approximately 10 seconds, the train came to an abrupt halt. The train conductor announced over the intercom, "There's a problem, everyone stay calm." Within seconds, gray-colored smoke was visible as it seeped through the tops of the passenger doors. A passenger on our car used the emergency intercom to alert someone that there was smoke on the train. We heard no response, and shortly thereafter, the train conductor entered our car and made his way to the back of the train. The conductor was using his radio to communicate with Central. I only heard him describing the situation on the train. I didn't hear any responses to the conductor's messages. Eventually, he passed through our car again on his way back to the front of the train. In the first of several announcements, the conductor informed us over the intercom that we should remain calm. The train was going to make its way backwards toward L'Enfant Plaza to escape the smoke. We were told not to evacuate the train and not to open the doors because the train would not be able to move if we did so. Further, there was zero visibility in the tunnel, and the conductor repeated this same message nearly every 2 minutes until the train was evacuated. At one point, the conductor assured passengers that there was no fire in the tunnel, only smoke. Approximately 5 minutes after the smoke had entered the train lurched backward but failed to move, and by this point, only the emergency lights above the doors were lit, and the train was dark and filling with thick smoke. The next photo I took was at 3:20 p.m., which was several minutes after the smoke had become thick. So as a very conservative estimate, one could mark the beginning of the incident at that time, 3:20 p.m. The video I took was recorded at 3:25 p.m., which captures passengers struggling to breathe and also a portion of the train conductor's announcements. Verbatim, the announcement was, "Once again, customers, please stay calm, please stay calm. We got one train about to get off the platform at L'Enfant Plaza right now as we speak. As soon as this train leaves, I'll be getting you all back to the platform. Please stay calm. Please do not open the doors. If you open the doors, the train will not move." In a photo I believe to be the last I took before giving CPR to Miss Glover, other passengers are laying on the ground at 3:39 p.m. The next photo I took was at 4:01 p.m., where it appears passengers are standing as we lined up to evacuate the train. At no point were we ever told that we would be evacuating and walking back to the platform. A line moving toward the back of the train seemed to form on its own. The next photo I took was at 4:20 p.m., as the line had slowly advanced toward the back of the train. This photo depicts firefighters evacuating a passenger who was having a seizure after other first responders had performed CPR on him. This was the first time I saw any first responders. I can't speak for when they arrived at the train, but this was the first time I saw them. Firefighters then guided us out of the side passenger doors onto a narrow walkway on the side of the tunnel. We followed a single file line back toward the station with help from firefighters on the tracks, lighting the way with their flashlights. The last photo I took was during that walk at 4:22 p.m., over an hour after the incident began. Once we reached the station platform, we proceeded up the escalators to the street level. Naturally, the scene outside was chaotic, and some passengers sought the help of first responders, while others just went on their way. I lingered in the area for a few minutes. No one directed me toward an ambulance or other medical attention. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Well, hold the questions. I don't know, can you cue the video that we've got that Mr. Rogers took? See if we've got that. I know they flashed some of the pictures during your testimony of the pictures that you took.
Please stay calm, please stay calm. We got one train about to get off the platform at L'Enfant Plaza right now as we speak. As soon as this train leaves, I'll be getting you all back to the platform. Please stay calm, please do not open the doors. If you open the doors, the train will not move. Train will not.
Well, Mr. Rogers, we thank you for providing us with not only the documentary of the incident and the horrific experience, but also for your heroic act in trying to save that passenger. So thank you very much on behalf of the full committee. I know everyone appreciates it. So now I'll turn to Mr. Hart and welcome him. And he is the acting chairman of the NTSB. Welcome, Mr. Hart, and you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Mica and Chairman Meadows and Ranking Members Connolly and DeSaulnier for inviting me to testify today on behalf of the NTSB. The NTSB is an independent federal agency that Congress created to investigate transportation accidents and incidents. We determine the probable cause and issue safety recommendations in an effort to prevent future mishaps. We have investigated mass transit accidents and issued recommendations about them for more than 40 years. It's a mode of transportation that is used by millions of people every day, and safety is our utmost concern. The NTSB included mass transit safety in its 2015 Most Wanted list to increase awareness of and support for the most critical changes that are needed to reduce mass transit accidents and incidents and save lives. With that introduction, let me turn to this accident. On January 12th at about 3:15 p.m., Metro Train 302 stopped in a yellow line tunnel south of the L'Enfant Plaza Metro station because it encountered heavy smoke, as you have already heard. The train following Train 302, which was Train 510, had entered the L'Enfant Plaza station and stopped about 100 feet from the south end of the platform because of the smoke in that station. WMATA Police and D.C. Fire and Emergency Medical Services helped to evacuate passengers from L'Enfant Plaza station. Some passengers on Train 302 self-evacuated through the tunnel either to L'Enfant Plaza or toward the Potomac River Bridge, but most others remained on the train. Excuse me. Unfortunately, one person died and scores required medical treatment as a result of this accident, and I would join with the members in extending our condolences to the family and friends of Mrs. Glover. We know now that the smoke was the result of an electrical arcing event. NTSB has collected evidence from the site, which Chairman Mica and Mr. DeSaulnier and others of you had the opportunity to see in our laboratory, and we thank you for coming to visit, to see it up close and personal. We're looking at that to determine what caused the arcing event. Also, we are aware of the various accounts of the emergency response that day. Many of these accounts have not been helpful to our safety investigation because they are often out of context and not validated or corroborated, and thus they are not helpful as a valid basis for drawing useful conclusions. We will issue the complete facts, but we are reluctant to issue any facts until we have the complete facts around that situation in order to avoid misinterpreting and out-of-context analysis. To date, the NTSB has gathered a great deal of information and continues to review data to validate it and provide an unbiased account of the facts of that day. Our investigators will look at many factors, including conditions leading to the arcing itself, emergency response efforts, emergency communications and interoperability, WMATA's efforts to improve its overall safety and safety culture since its Fort Totten accident in 2009, the state of WMATA's infrastructure and state of good repair, the Federal Transit Administration's rulemaking on public transportation safety, and the Tri-State Oversight Committee's oversight responsibilities. There is still much work to be done to produce a final investigative report. As part of this process, we will hold a public investigative hearing on June 23 and 24 to gather additional investigative information and to add to the public's knowledge about the events of that day. But as this investigation continues, we issue urgent recommendations if we identify safety issues in the course of any investigation that warrant immediate attention. More specifically, we issued 3 urgent recommendations to WMATA earlier this week regarding its ventilation system. These recommendations are about providing guidance and training on how to use the ventilation system, how to ensure that these procedures conform to best practices, and checking to make sure that the ventilation system is in working order. The recommendation about improved processes in response to smoke events and about training regarding those processes results from our discovering in the investigation that the ventilation fans could have been used more effectively to remove the smoke from the tunnel. We also learned that one of the smoke alarms ahead of Train 302, which was very close to the arcing event, activated several minutes before that train left the L'Enfant Plaza station. So one of the issues we'll be looking at is to what extent are those alarms apparent in the control center, and how do they react when they see a smoke alarm in front of a train. Are these safety issues limited to WMATA? We do not know. In order to obtain assessments of ventilation systems and other transit systems, perhaps in your own districts, we also issued an urgent recommendation to the Federal Transit Administration to audit such ventilation systems in transit agencies under its regulatory purview, and companion recommendations to the American Public Transportation Association, or APTA, to apply these accident lessons even more broadly. Our goals, as always, are to prevent accidents and prevent or mitigate the severity of injuries in any future event. And we will issue more recommendations if needed as the investigation proceeds. We must work to ensure that the circumstances of this event do not occur again here or in any other transit system. Thank you for inviting me to testify today, and I look forward to responding to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. And we'll now turn to Mr. Mort Downey, who chairs the Board of Directors of the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority. Welcome, and you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Mica, and Chairman Meadows, Acting Ranking Member DeSaulnier, and my Congressman Jerry Connolly, to be here. I am Mort Downey, recently elected Chair of the Board of Directors of Metro, and a regular Metro rider over the last 20 years, and a New York City subway rider for 30 years before that, so I am familiar with these systems. First, I have to say, on behalf of the Board, we were devastated by the outcome of this event. We have expressed and continue to express our condolences to the family of Carol Glover. who lost her life. And obviously, we thank all of the first responders, our employees, and the members of the public who came to the aid of our customers during that incident. As Chairman Hart identified, an investigation by the NTSB is now underway. Metro is fully engaged and cooperating with what Chairman Hart outlined as a very comprehensive look at where we are in terms of safety. The fact there's an empty chair between the Chairman and myself is not an indication that we are not working closely together. We are joined at the hip on this investigation. And we stand ready to act on NTSB recommendations, including any preliminary findings. Just 2 days ago, the Chairman issued the first recommendations adopted by the NTSB, not only to us, but to the entire transit industry concerning the tunnel ventilation system. Even before those recommendations were in our hands, Metro had already conducted a system-wide inspection of all the tunnel fan shafts, and at that point found them to be in good working order. We also provided retraining to the 39 controllers at the Rail Operations Control Center in terms of proper use of the fans. We're now in the process of developing additional protocol and training. But as the NTSB continues its review, we are not waiting. Yesterday, having looked at the findings that were in our hands, I directed Metro's Chief Safety Officer, Jim Doherty, to identify an independent expert panel organization who could review for us the Metro Rail Operations Control Center, its equipment, its procedures, the training, the information that they have in place. To run a world-class transit system, we have to have a fully operational, fully dependable Operations Control Center. Decisions are made there that obviously affect the lives of our customers, and we'd like to get a good look by fresh eyes as to how that control center works. We've also identified and begun to implement 10 early safety actions based on our own assessments. These 10 include such steps as signage being installed on the outside of all of our rail cars to identify the doors that are readily accessible and openable without a key from someone on the ground or on a platform to get passengers out. We obviously train first responders on how to access the rail cars. We want to add that on-the-site information that they would need. We also have given train operators independent authority, should they encounter a smoke incident, to immediately turn off the vent system in the train that's bringing air into the train. That formerly, for whatever reason, was something they needed permission to do. We want our employees to act on their own ideas of what needs to be done. And as I said, we have reviewed the protocols for employees at the Rail Control Center, but intend to do more there. As another early action, our Office of Emergency Management, which is under the supervision of the Police Department, has created an enhanced schedule for full-scale emergency drills to be conducted. We're scheduling them out for 3 years, not that we will stop after that point, but to give the jurisdictions clear indication of when those drills will occur, where they will occur. Some will be underground, some will be on aerial structures, some will be in stations. It's an additional opportunity for us and the jurisdictions and the law enforcement and response agencies to test their capabilities, to build coordination, and to practice unified command in a real-life setting. We're also working with the region's fire chiefs through the Council of Governments to establish regular radio testing and reporting protocols. As you've heard, each jurisdiction has its own radio system, but we have to make sure that they are workable inside the tunnel environment. It's not that we'll all be on the same radios. The issue is that everybody's radios will work and that we can communicate to Metro employees, fire and rescue can communicate to their people, and at the top chain in the incident command, they can communicate with each other. And there will be regular testing and reporting of the status of the system so that we're all aware if anything needs to be fixed. We've mentioned Homeland Security earlier. We are an open system. There are unique challenges in maintaining the security of the system. We are grateful for the support that has come to install equipment and to build additional facilities. We are using that. We have now cameras throughout the system that capture what's going on. We are also, as you know, rebuilding the system with a capital program to take a 39-year-old system and begin to put it back in the shape that it should be in. There are a lot of things. The new rail cars are a key part of that, but there are upgrades of tracks, structures, signal systems. We've developed safety programs, some that we've actually created on our own, a roadway worker training program for those employees who are out working on the tracks, a close call program where we get the cooperation of all employees to bring to our attention, either directly to us or anonymously through a Federal agency, anything that has happened that we should know about, that we could build safety improvements on that. We also have implemented a fatigue management system, the first on any transit property, to be sure that our employees are not being called to work longer hours than are helpful. We have, when I joined the board, there were 29 open recommendations from the NTSB stemming from Fort Totten and earlier accidents. 25 of those are closed. 4 are still open, but are in an acceptable condition, at least as far as the Safety Board is concerned. We're working to finish all of them. We have closed all but one recommendation from Federal Transit based on a review they produced in 2012. We will be welcoming them back in the next few weeks to start another review of the safety culture and the safety achievements in the system. It is still our #1 focus. I believe we've made real progress, but we cannot claim that we are where we need to be. In the face of this event, we need to do more, and we will do more, not only for ourselves, but with our partners, but primarily for the customers and riders and public in this region who need to depend on us. So I thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I also will be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Downey, and we'll turn to Mr. Edward Mills, the Assistant Fire Chief for the District of Columbia. Welcome, sir, and you're recognized.
Good morning. Good morning, members of the Transportation, Public Asset, and Government Operations Subcommittee. My name is Edward Mills. I currently serve as the Assistant Fire Chief with the District of Columbia Fire Department. As this is my first time before Congress, let me take a moment to introduce myself and the position for which I serve. My role is to oversee emerging operations for the District of Columbia Fire and Emergency Medical Services Department, to coordinate with other public safety agencies and Federal partners, including WMATA, to prevent, protect, mitigate, respond to, and recover from disasters and emergencies. I have spent 36 years of dedicated service in the Fire and Rescue Service, 18 years in Prince William County as both a career and volunteer firefighter, as well as 18 years with the District of Columbia Fire Department. I thank you for allowing me the opportunity to discuss the District's response to the January 12th incident at the L'Enfant Plaza Metro. I will provide a brief summary of the incident, our response to it, and corrective steps we have already taken. I also want to state from the outset that the suffering that occurred during and as a result of the January 12th incident and tragedy, I extend my sympathies to the family of Ms. Carol Glover and everyone else who was injured or went through that terrifying experience that day. I want to assure the committee and the public that on January 12th, my department responded quickly, acted bravely, and conducted rescue efforts that led to a positive outcome of the incident. I'm grateful that the Mayor Bowser administration has taken immediate steps to address issues identified by our preliminary reviews, which I believe will improve safety precautions. The administration has also taken the unprecedented steps of releasing 911 call transcripts and providing a thorough chronology of the events. In doing so, our goal is not to assign blame, but to be open and transparent with our residents, visitors, and Metro riders. We want to assure the residents and visitors of the District of Columbia that our department is prepared to handle any type of emergency at any time. The incident inside the L'Enfant Plaza Metro Station, according to a publicly released NTSB preliminary report on January 12, 2015, at approximately 3:06 p.m., an electrical breaker at one end of a section of third rail tripped or remained open. At approximately 3:15 p.m., moments after it departed southbound train from L'Enfant Plaza Metro Station toward the Potomac River Bridge, a 6-car Yellow Line train encountered heavy smoke and came to a complete stop in the tunnel. After stopping, the rear of the Metro train was about 386 feet from the south end of the L'Enfant Plaza Metro station. A second 6-car train arrived at L'Enfant Plaza at approximately 3:25 p.m. and was also affected by heavy smoke. This second train stopped, allowing its passengers to exit the train and evacuate from the station. At 3:18, the Office of Unified Communications received a 911 call from a construction worker who reported smoke coming from a Metro ventilation shaft at 9th and Water Street Southwest. The Office of Unified Communications dispatched fire and EMS units at 3:22 p.m. They arrived on scene at 3:25 p.m. The 2 responding units reported the smell of smoke emitting from the grate of the ventilation shaft. Approximately 5 minutes after responding on the scene, responders observed 2 individuals in the ventilation shaft who apparently had self-evacuated from that stranded train. The responders notified their battalion fire chief, opened the ventilation shaft doors, descended approximately 50 to 75 feet to assist and evacuate those 2 individuals. The second emergency call from a WMATA supervisor was received by the Office of Unified Communications at 3:22 p.m. The WMATA supervisor reported heavy smoke in the upper level of the L'Enfant Plaza Metro station. A subsequent call from a different WMATA employee was received at 3:24. The caller requested medics and fire units to L'Enfant Plaza Metro station due to smoke in the station and individuals having difficulty breathing. At 3:28, the Office of Unified Communications dispatched a Metro station box alarm to L'Enfant Plaza Metro. The first unit, Rescue Squad 1, arrived on the scene at 3:31 p.m. The first MPD unit from the 1st District arrived on the scene 1 minute later. At 3:33 p.m., Engine 4, Engine 18, and EMS 6 arrived on the scene, followed by Engine 23, Engine 10, and Engine 1. I want to make it clear that within 8 minutes of the time of dispatch, 7 units from DC Fire and EMS were on the scene at L'Enfant Plaza Metro. I also want to emphasize the point that fire and EMS responders at this point did not know there was a train in the tunnel filled with passengers. The only information we had received at that point was there was heavy smoke in the Metro station. Under fire and EMS protocol, a Metro station box alarm consists of 5 engine companies, 2 ladder trucks, 2 battalion chiefs. 1 battalion chief responds to the Metro Operations Control Center in Landover, Maryland. 1 heavy rescue squad, 1 basic life support unit, and 1 advanced life support unit, along with 1 EMS supervisor. The first unit on the scene, Rescue Squad 1, who arrived at 3:31, made their way down into the platform level where they were met by members of the Metro Transit Police Department, and at that point, that was the first time we had any indication of a train being stuck in the tunnel. I arrived on the scene at approximately 3:35 and immediately assessed the ongoing situation. I did a face-to-face communications with the on-scene Deputy Fire Chief, established unified command with the Metro Fire Marshal, as well as a member from the Metro Transit Police Department. The first responders had encountered a smoke-filled Metro station with numerous individuals evacuating the station or just having evacuated at street level. Responders began assisting these individuals as these people had soot around their nose and mouths, which may indicate potential respiratory burns. As first responders moved to the lower level of the platform, they first encountered an empty Metro train at the platform and an evacuated station. That did lead to some confusion as to whether that was the train in question. At that point, until they met with the transit police officers, it was not clear. So the train in the tunnel was still in question at that time. One group of first responders, Recon 1, entered the Metro tunnel following the catwalk alongside the train tracks. As you move down into the tunnel split for the orange or the yellow line and the green line. The first group went down the side with the green line, shut the power off the blue light station, and continued down. At that point, the crew from Rescue Squad 1 went to the opposite tunnel where they located the yellow line train approximately 386 feet into the tunnel, disabled the power and by the blue light station, and at that point had made their way to the train and asked the passengers to open the door. Once they couldn't open the door, they moved to the side where they had the keys to be able to open the door and start evacuating the passengers. Although their actions violated our department's written protocols, once they were informed that there were passengers on a stranded train in the tunnel, they did make their way down to start assisting those individuals trapped. When they made it to the train and immediately got into the train to triage the individuals, a short time after, they came across Ms. Glover, brought her out, and made sure that she was headed back to the platform level. Yet once the first responders realized they were dealing with an incredibly serious situation with a train full of passengers, they did not wait for confirmation that the power was down. Instead, they acted, went into the tunnel, filled with heavy smoke, had near zero visibility, and because they heard and felt the orange and blue line trains entering the station on the lower level tracks, there were still questions as to whether the power had been completely shut down. Yet they ignored these significant risks to themselves and made their way forward to help the stranded passengers. Once Rescue Squad 1 reached the train, they attempted to open the emergency exit door, as I stated before. As they started removing the passengers, they were able to move them to the catwalk, which is 22 inches wide, which required us to make a single file line and move the passengers out in an orderly manner. The statement by the lieutenant from Rescue Squad 1 did acknowledge how cooperative the passengers on the train for what they were going through were, and we were grateful for their cooperation. In total, Fire and EMS treated several hundred individuals who were on the train. 84 of those individuals were transported to local hospitals. During the incident, Fire and EMS personnel encountered difficulty communicating with each other inside the metro station using traditional radio communications channels. Let me provide some context to that. DC Fire and EMS operates using 16 radio channels and has used those same channels since the year 2000. The technology used to operate this radio system was installed in 2004 or upgraded in 2004 and is maintained by the Office of Unified Communications. However, in the WMATA system, all below-ground communications equipment is maintained by WMATA, including bidirectional amplifiers in the tunnels. These amplifiers, including those in the tunnel at LaFont Plaza, are designed to boost radio transmissions and allow those transmissions to work underground. If the bidirectional amplifiers in an underground WMATA tunnel are not working, radio communications will be interrupted. The P25 radio system that went into effect in December of 2014, while some of those 16 channels used by EMS, Fire and EMS, became encrypted for us to utilize on incidents requiring sensitive communications such as terrorist-type incidents, administrative communications, and joint operations involving criminal matters with law enforcement. All the radio channels used by Fire and EMS, both encrypted and unencrypted, failed to work that day. The bidirectional amplifiers in the LaFont Plaza tunnel were not working on January 12th. As a result, all below-ground radio communications were interrupted during the response. I hasten to add that when we established an above-ground treatment and triage area for the people that we were evacuating, all of our radio channels, encrypted and unencrypted, worked the way we expected them to. Finally, we've learned that on January 8th, during a subsequent response to the L'Enfant Plaza Metro Station, units responding that day experienced radio failures. Those failures were reported to WMATA, and WMATA responded to Fire and EMS that the problem appeared to be equipment issues within the station. Responders on January 12th had to use a variety of alternate means of communications, including cell phones, direct talk communications, and face-to-face communications within the tunnel. Mayor Bowser has instructed the Office of Unified Communications, in conjunction with WMATA, to conduct weekly testing of radios at all Metro stations in the district. We are aware that some of the surrounding jurisdictions have also implemented testing on their own Metro facilities within their jurisdictions. The results of the weekly OUC testings are shared with WMATA, which is responsible for taking corrective actions. During radio testing conducted the week of January 19th, the Office of Unified Communications identified 9 Metro facilities on the red, green, orange, and blue lines that failed inspection. During OUC's reinspection of all of those Metro facilities, additional failures had been found and are all under repair. These tests will continue on a weekly basis for the foreseeable future. In addition to Fire and EMS initial report, HSEMA also produced an initial District of Columbia report on the L'Enfant Plaza Metro Station, which highlighted many of these failures. OUC testing included the Metro Station entrance, both ends, and middle of the train at platform levels in the specific areas of failure was noted, and Office of Unified Communications provided that information to WMATA. Additionally, Fire and EMS has reissued a protocol to its members on the proper alternative means of communications when radio coverage in suboptimal or down locations, and Fire and EMS and OUC are working collectively with WMATA to identify and immediately address these communication issues. Currently, NTSB is conducting an investigation into the incident. Mayor Bowser has ordered all district agencies to fully cooperate with that investigation. Fire and EMS has worked with NTSB to interview responders who were first on the scene, as well as to provide access to any documentation required by NTSB. And as a final and important point in my prepared testimony, let me emphasize the Mayor is committed to being transparent about information related to the incident. We have worked diligently to release as many details as we can to help the public make sense of the tragic events of that day. The Mayor has committed to using all information related to the incident, including that which will be in the NTSB report, to help improve the District's response to and from the public Homeland Security incidents.
Thank you, Chief Mills. And we'll hear our last witness, Jackie Jeter, and she's President and Business Agent of Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 689. Welcome, and you're recognized.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and full ranking committee members. Thank you for allowing the ATU to be a part of this hearing. We offer condolences to all those involved in the accident. I'm Jackie Jeter, President of ATU Local 689. 5 years ago, after the tragic June 2009 Red Line accident, Local 689 testified in support of retraining plans, routine recertification, and equipment upgrades. We stated our belief that the cultivation of a safety culture at the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority would not only benefit our members, but just as importantly, the riding public. I am here today to testify to the troubling fact that our system is still lacking acceptance of the need of a safety culture at WMATA. While we commend the improvements made since the 2009 accident, we must point out the task of developing a safety culture has not been met. When I speak of a safety culture, I am referring to overall attitudes, belief, and atmosphere that is cultivated at WMATA. We must have everyone, from the GM to the least senior, invested in making sure that safety is our #1 priority. This attitude must be reinforced from the top to the bottom, with assurances that all the rules that are created are implemented fairly. Think about it. People experience a sense of pride when they are treated with dignity on the job, when their opinions are valued, their family responsibilities are respected, and they have a feeling of ownership through job security. As President, I hear the complaints of the lack of morale and confidence in the handling of our care. The majority of the employees of WMATA do not have comfort in the feeling of overall safety. A safety culture can only be effective when all employees are confident that their opinion and work ethic is valued. An essential part of establishing a safety culture is providing employees with the opportunity to express suggestions and comments when they experience safety concerns. Because of the lack of those feelings, our members have developed a sense of paranoia. It is difficult to get them to trust that WMATA will handle the information that they give with care. We believe change takes constant investment in workers as well as property. It takes the acceptance of ideas, trust in their ability to build confidence in WMATA's efforts, the efforts of their co-worker skills, and the implementation of safety initiatives that protect and build confidence on their behalf. I have stated to officials of WMATA openly that they cannot discipline their way to a right and just safety culture. WMATA's procedure implies that a safety culture can be developed with the sole use of discipline instead of implementing constant, intense training procedures. Training will prepare the employees for catastrophic events like June 12th. Most of our members are not sent to safety training until they make a mistake. We do not have a training program that employees can freely attend to enhance their skill level without permission of supervision. This is not a habit that promotes a willing, healthy safety culture. In order to have a great safety culture, training and discipline must go hand in hand in a proactive way. One of the recommendations implemented from the 2009 accident was the establishment of safety committee meetings. But most of the safety committee meetings are now attended by the few. The topics of discussion are mostly employee accidents, absenteeism, and workmen's compensation claims. These may be important to the general manager or CFO, but they are not the most important topics that affect employees in their daily experience. These safety committee meetings have to be about the protection of employer, worker, and the riding public, not just the employer's perspective on safety. Workers have developed their own expectations of safety based on their daily experiences, such as the lack of bathroom facilities, rats in the stations, unruly passengers, equipment issues, operator assaults, prompt report repairs, the cleanliness of stations, what to do before a passenger spits on you, the lack of police presence throughout the system, and the list goes on and on. This must be incorporated in the program of safety to gain trust and constant interest. My testimony today is not to lay blame or point fingers. Instead, it is intended to open the discussion that includes everyone, my members, WMATA, you, and the people who ride the buses and trains every day. And this discussion shouldn't just happen when you want to implement a new safety procedure or policy. It is about developing the expertise and trust for all employees so that a situation like January 12th can be handled in the safest possible way each and every time. Local 689 remains, as always, dedicated to safety to our members and our riders. And I'll take any questions.
Thank you, and we will get to questions right now, and with pending votes, we'll try to make these as brief as possible and succinct. First, Mr. Downey, I guess you just took over as chair?
3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I've been on the board for 5 years, but
well,
I've
welcome.
just become chairman.
Yeah. But, and I might say I've worked with him for many years, outstanding reputation. They couldn't have a better chair, but.
He's also my constituent.
Good, well.
In spite of that.
In any event, first of all, there was a communications failure. It appears that the system works above ground but not below ground. And you're telling us that now it does work and has been tested.
There is now a regular process of testing by the
Does it work?
things
Chief?
that have been identified that need fixing are being fixed or have been fixed.
But they may not be fixed. Chief?
The Office of Unified Communications, in conjunction with WMATA, we're doing weekly tests in the various metro stations, and any of our emergency responders that respond to stations also test the radios while they're there. And there is a report that we fill out that gets forwarded by that company to one of our battalion chiefs, to WMATA and OUC.
Somewhere the ball was dropped there. I was very concerned about the above-ground interoperability. We've had several incidents above ground, and there was an interoperability lacking in well, we have D.C. Police, we have Secret Service, we have a whole host of folks, and some of you may recall the incidents. You think that's under control? Ability to communicate between the different enforcement agencies and first responders?
Yes, Mayor Bowser has put out a directive that we will be going away from the encrypted, which will allow us to restore our immediate.
I'm talking beyond that, your ability to communicate with the other agencies.
Yes, we have that.
Okay. Let me ask you, too, another question was the training of the first responders. They said only 100 of the firefighters, 1,700 firefighters that might have to deal with these incidents had been trained. What's the story there?
We have various levels of training. We have everybody who comes through our Fire and Rescue Training Academy receives training related to Metro and how to operate within a Metro systems emergency. Now, as we move forward with our training, there are technical rescue training, which the 100 we sent out, that dealt specifically with elevators and escalator rescues within the Metro system.
But basic things like, again, if more than likely the power might stay on in an incident, how to get people in and out with a hot track.
Okay, we have tools as part of the basic training that they get in the training academy.
When it comes down to it, not everybody has been trained who might have to respond to those kind of incidents and, say, a hot track.
Yes, everybody receives that training. Why they go through the Fire and EMS Training Academy when they're in their rookie stage, everybody gets that training.
On a Metro situation?
Yes. They get the basic Metro safety training.
All right. I wanted to.
Mr. Chairman, could I add something to that?
Yes.
The 100 out of a total of about 5,000 who were trained were individuals who came to our training center at Landover, where there is a mock tunnel, where there are cars, where they really can see the hands-on. We can even fill it with smoke and show what that situation would be like. That's what we hope we can do with the vast majority of people who would respond on Metro, so they could see what actually exists on the ground.
And the system, there's a conductor on each of these trains. Of course, we've got dozens of, almost everybody on a Metro has a cell phone. They didn't work. We've got recordings from Mr. Rogers' attempts and you can hear the communications were garbled. So people wouldn't know if the conductor can't tell them we've got people trapped in a car down here. That's solved too?
We had a subsequent emergency last week where we had back-to-back Metro boxes, and they were at the same time, and the communications between Fire and EMS, Metro, and the response that we got showed marked improvement. All of our requests that we made during those incidents, Metro complied with immediately, and we were able to mitigate both of those incidents in a timely manner.
Okay. How many people here took Metro this week? Anybody? Raise your hand. Okay. All right. Quite a few hands went up, and as many as 750,000 people a day want answers to those questions. Mr. Connolly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome again to the panel. Mr. Donny, picking up on your distinction, Mr. Mills, you said all 1,700 have taken training with respect to Metro. But not all 1,700 have gone to the Landover facility to be trained at the tunnel facsimile. Is that not correct?
That's correct. We are in the process through the Washington Council of Governments Chiefs Committee. There has been rapid improvement in communications with Metro, and we are sending.
Yep. I've got very limited time.
Okay.
Unlike you. So in your testimony, so because we have votes coming, is it up to the different jurisdictions whether they choose to have that specialized training, Mr. Downey?
We can't force them to come. We
Right.
say it is available.
So
It will be
weakness number one, we don't have consistency in the requirement for training in responding to an incident in Metro anywhere in the system.
We have some that are very well trained. Fairfax County sent 754 responders.
And D.C. sent 100.
In this particular year, 100.
And most of Fairfax's Metro is above ground.
Yes.
Most of D.C. is below ground, in tunnels. So, Mr. Mills, I know that you're new to Congress, but, I mean, this is very troubling that D.C. has not elected to train all of its people at the Landover facility, given the fact that 90-something% of Metro in D.C. is underground.
Well, the 100 you're referring to was last year. Subsequent years prior to that, we have rotated all of our companies out there, so a large number of our personnel have been trained at the Landover facility. Last year, we sent 100 for technical rescue. Now, the Metro tunnel, as you say, is underground, hasn't changed. It's still the same tunnel that these individuals were trained on years ago. And let me make this clear. Our members would not have been able to respond to that incident on January 12th, overcome the many challenges that they faced that day with lack of information, inability to communicate, had they not received proper training in years past. They operated tremendously that day.
Mr. Mills, you don't need to defend the rank and file. They're brave men and women, and they put themselves in harm's way. This is a management issue. This is about management, not about the rank and file. How much money has D.C. gotten since 2001 through UASI grants for radios and communication?
I don't have those figures.
It would be in the tens of millions, would it not?
I can't answer that.
Really? Well, let's get somebody who can. Mr. Downey, how much has Metro received in UASI?
Metro has received about $200 million in support, much of which has gone for cameras, for terrorist teams, for our dog teams, but some of which has gone for radios and other communications.
On September 2001, I remember vividly, 2 of our region's systems didn't communicate with anyone else, D.C. and U.S. Park Police. They were in different frequencies, they had different equipment, and we all vowed we were going to fix that. We were going to have a uniform set of standards so we could all speak to one another, and interoperability was paramount in our prioritization of UASI grants. Here we are 14 years later, and Mr. Mills is testifying that none of the radios worked underground. They did work on the surface, but his men and women couldn't be communicated with so that they had an incident report and had accurate information as to where's the train, how many people are in the train, what's the condition of the people in the train, is the third rail turned off or not. I mean, how is this possible after 14 years and hundreds of millions? I assure you, Mr. Mills, it's in the hundreds for D.C. as well. And we still don't have the ability for Mr. Mills' men and women to respond safely and to try to help Mr. Rogers and his companions in that train. How is that possible?
There are protocols, there are processes. Clearly, they have to be exercised through training and through regular inspections to see that they are working. It's an ever ongoing process. We can't say that because we spent the money in 2001, it will be working today. We have to be sure that it is working today. I mentioned earlier my concern about our control center. These people run the whole system. They were the ones who could actually know what was going on. We have to be sure that they're hearing what's happening and pass it along.
But obviously the system did not work properly. And one life was lost, and we could have lost more.
Correct.
I have one more question, Mr. Chairman, because I know we've got to run. Mr. Hart, this is an easy one, I think. Were Metro's SOPs on ventilation consistent with the '07 guidance issued by NTSB?
We didn't find any written operating procedures, and so we don't have a good answer for you yet. That's one of the things we're looking at in the course of the evaluation.
If I'm looking at page 3 of your interim report, the answer seems to be no.
Well, we know that there's someone put an exit fan in at the station, and that's pretty much logical. That's what you would expect to happen. Smoke in the station, let's exit it. But they were also doing exit at the other place, which made it a pull-pull operation, which didn't move the smoke. So
thank you. My time is up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Let me recognize the Chairman of the Operations Subcommittee, Mr. Meadows.
Thank each of you for your testimony. Mr. Mills, let me come to you because you said that even when your men and women went down to make the rescue, you weren't sure if the electricity was turned off. You weren't sure that there were passengers on the train. Is that correct?
Yeah, at the time they initially made their way into the station, we had not received the information
Yeah,
at all.
I need yeses or nos. I only got
That's
5
correct,
minutes.
yes.
Okay, if that's correct, why would you have not known? Who is responsible for letting you know that?
When the call was made from WMATA to the Office of Unified Communications, they should have
So
reloaded.
WMATA should have known that the track was energized, not energized.
Correct.
Said there's people on the train, you need to get there, and that communication did not happen.
Correct.
Mr. Downey, why did that not happen?
That's one of the reasons why I've asked the Control Center study to be accomplished. That's their function.
I guess before
board-
we answer the question, Mr. Downey, how many people have to die and how many events do we have to have before we can answer that question? Why did that not
We
happen?
should not have another event like this at any time. We need to look at our procedures. We need to retrain our people. We need to establish as
But I looked at some
Mr.
of the question and answer, Mr. Downey, and this is not to be directed just at you. I looked at some of the questions and answers with 2009. And some of the same things were said back then. We're going to do training, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And yet, here we are some 6 years later, and the same thing happened.
I would like to provide for you the things we have done, but there's
I-
still a
I
long
don't
list,
need- I don't-
still a long list of things that
You know,
should
if
be
you
doing.
tell the 80-plus people that were facing death about the things we have done, they don't care about that. All they care about the things we haven't done. All right. So let me ask you, Mr. Downey, because a lot has been made of this resources and lack of resources that we have, and that this is not just a management problem. And so, because I don't know, I just went in and I went to the National Transit Database, and I looked at what transit in New York, Chicago, and here in Washington, what they're spending. And when I looked at those figures, it looks like you're spending more money than Chicago, who has a bigger system. So is it really a resource problem or a management problem?
I don't know whether you're talking about our operating expense or our
I'll look at
Yeah.
operating and
Right,
total,
yeah.
because you're spending more on all of those things.
I know we are spending more on capital than probably Chicago, not as much as New York. We're spending a lot because we're catching up from years and years of deferred maintenance. We really need to go through the system and replace.
So your testimony here today is that you're not really spending more than those systems that are actually bigger, that your budget is not bigger.
I don't know if our operating.
Because I went back over 10 years, and I looked at the budget and compared it to Chicago. And your budget every single year is bigger all the way around than Chicago, who is a bigger system with more employees and more customers. So is that a management problem?
I'd be happy to look at that. I know it's smaller than New York, but I know the comparison to Chicago I'm not familiar with.
All right. So let me go on a little bit further, because what troubles me is that we'll have this hearing and nothing happens. Do you believe that some of the problem was because smoke in tunnels, trains not working, elevators not working, escalators not working, things not working, that that's become so commonplace that when Mr. Mills got the call, they just figured, well, it's just another smoke in the tunnel? Is that commonplace to see smoke in the tunnels?
There are occasions where either a trash fire or some small thing happens where there is smoke, but I think we should always assume that there are people at risk. I think the response should be based on the fact that trains run in the tunnels, people are on trains. We really have to keep that in mind as what could be a worst case and respond to it.
All right. Mr. Hart, my last question is to you, because obviously you're going to make some recommendations. You have made some preliminary things. I go back to some of the prior events, not just 2009, but before that. The NTSB has made recommendations in those, and you've closed some of your recommendations because WMATA has not responded. And to quote your report, it says, because you could not compel them to take action. Do you expect the same response this time?
I wouldn't want to predict what the response is. I would just say that at this point, WMATA is cooperating with us very well in the investigation.
Have they always cooperated with every recommendation in the past?
Well, I wouldn't
Yes or
say
no?
I wouldn't say every recommendation, most.
So there are recommendations that you deemed important that they did not respond to?
Yet, that's correct.
All right, thank you.
The gentleman recognize Mr. DeSaldi now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Downey, thank you for your service. We appreciate part-time service.
Part-time uncompensated service.
Yes, I'm aware. Many of us used to do that. So specifically to the safety culture and specific responses, brief, please, and then Ms. Jeter. This is disturbingly familiar to the situation in the Bay Area that I've been, unfortunately, very intimately involved with.
I know that.
Between ATU, all of the locals at BART, and management. Ms. Jeter said that the safety culture should go from the general manager down to the rank and file. I would add that it should be actively engaged in at the board level.
Board level.
Unfortunately, too often in these boards, my experience is that you are very dependent on staff and sometimes reluctant to question staff. So what specifically is the board doing? And I'm not ascribing blame, by the way, to either side, but the collective culture has led to somebody losing their lives, I should say, many people losing their lives. So for all the specific things we have to do in operations and improved resources, you've still got this culture. What is the board doing to remedy it?
I believe that that does start with the board. When I joined the board in 2010 in the aftermath of the Fort Totten incident, one of the first things I asked the board to do was to establish a regular safety committee. I've chaired that committee for the last 5 years. We meet once a month. We get regular progress reports on dealing with NTSB and other recommendations. We review incident reports.
Mr. Downey, excuse me, my question, again, because we're all limited in time, is the relationship with the employees. What are you doing specifically on the board to do corrective things for what's been described by Ms. Jeter? And again, I'm not ascribing blame, but it's a problem that has to be solved.
One of our early actions was to do an employee survey, and frankly, in 2011, it showed the conditions that Ms. Jeter described. We recognized that as what needed to be changed. We've taken a number of steps. A survey a year or so ago indicated to us that there had been improvement, but clearly there's always more room. We at the top, at the board, are committed to a safety culture. If you asked me to describe it, I would describe it the same way Ms. Jeter did. We need to work down through the organization and find where in the middle it's not functioning as it should.
Ms. Jeter, have you given specific recommendations to the board as to how to improve the situation, either outside of collective bargaining or during collective bargaining, that you're comfortable giving to the committee?
I won't say specifically, because I know there's a couple of letters that I've written to the board concerning things that the union feels needs to be looked at. But I can say that to the general manager and down through the safety committees we have. Mr. Connolly, I'm sorry, talked about the radio problem. It's a radio problem throughout the system. It's not just this particular incident that happened to happen with the preparedness team that was there, the emergency response team. It is a problem. And I've said to the general manager, Sarles, as well as the acting general manager, that some of the concerns that we have are the ones that we actually do not we look at a survey and we look at employees saying, oh, yes, I would respond to a safety issue, but that's not a safety culture. And anybody will say anything, especially when the rule says you're supposed to report all safety issues. So, of course, they're going to say yes to a survey.
Thank you, Ms. Jeter. Mr. Hart, your great comments under the most wanted list, transportation safety, on page 2 of your testimony, quote, mass transit agencies should work to identify, define, prioritize, and mitigate safety risks. That's permissive. Should it be less permissive and must, and what's the role of the Federal Department of Transportation? If you could be brief, I have a question for Mr. Rogers I want to finish with.
Sure. We are not part of the Department of Transportation. Your question would be more aptly directed to the regulator, which is the Federal Transit Administration. We are the investigator. We can't require anyone to do anything.
Okay. Mr. Rogers, again, thank you. And having lived through this, and probably the most important stakeholder here is the commuter, and the confidence you have in the system. Having listened to all this, and clearly something that was emotional and will stay with you the rest of your life, do you have any sense of greater confidence in the system and that this won't happen again?
I guess not yet, not at this point, but I'm hopeful that they can make the changes that will increase safety. So.
Thank you, sir. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
The Chair recognizes the gentleman, Mr. Grothman.
Okay, just a couple questions. I guess for Mr. Downey, whoever else wants to answer, just so I get a sense here, as far as other metros, Boston, Chicago, New York, or in Europe, Latin America, could you compare your safety record per passenger or per trip or whatever to these other systems in other countries or elsewhere around the United States?
We do regular reporting on incidents, number of passenger injuries, et cetera. We generally compare ourselves to where we were in the past to see that we're getting better. There are data, but it's very hard to make the comparison. I think on the whole we do rank reasonably well, but I wouldn't totally depend on how we report things, how others report things. I think what's really important is we're looking at where we are and where we need to be and measuring, are we or are we not getting better.
Okay, so you don't really have a hard feeling, I suppose.
Couldn't give you a hard number.
Don't really keep track of that. Okay.
I would give you one hard comment, which is public transit everywhere is a very, very safe mode of transportation relative to other ways of getting around.
Okay. Apparently in 2006, you had a similar incident, and the train operator, he just went car to car and didn't manage to evacuate the passengers. Could you comment on why that didn't happen this time, or why is there training going on, or why apparently the operator was able to handle this 8 years ago and not this year?
I think, so we heard from Mr. Rogers, the train operator in this incident, and I think the Safety Board report will clear up whatever happened. He did go through the train. He did communicate. From all I've read about it, this was, from his standpoint, a well-handled responsibility that he has. I think the 2006 incident was a Chicago event.
Chicago, okay.
Not a Washington event.
Okay. I yield my time.
I thank the gentleman. We do have votes, and so I want to just remind members that we have votes, but the Chair recognizes the gentlewoman from New York.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll be very brief. My condolences to Ms. Glover's family and appreciation to the first responders and Good Samaritans that rushed to try to save lives. Mr. Downey, I represent New York, and on 9/11, our radios didn't work, and it attributed to the loss of over 300 firefighters' lives. And since then, this Congress has tried to help localities make them work. And I understand that Metro has spent over $31 million on radio equipment and interoperability through the Federal Transit Administration-funded projects. So I just want to ask you, and I guess we don't have time to hear an answer, but is there any more that Congress can do? But why can't we get these radios to work? We can put people on the moon, And if we could get these radios to work, it could save lives. And I'm not just going after your area. They still don't work in New York. They're still not interoperable. So there's a disconnect. There's something happening that this project that should be achievable is not working. I feel it's critical and serious, and that we need to be able to do it to save lives. But that's my question. But the Chairman's telling me we have to rush to vote. So I respectfully request an answer in writing.
We'll provide you that.
Back to the committee. Thank you.
I thank the gentlewoman. I'm going to go ahead and let her go ahead to votes. I will say that because of the serious nature of this particular event and obviously the serious tone of this particular hearing, we're going to continue on with this hearing now and not recess. And I'm going to recognize the gentlewoman from the district here, Ms. Holmes-Nord.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to let Mr. Byers go.
All right, we'll go ahead and recognize Mr. Byers so he can go to the vote.
He has the right to vote.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Norton. Well, let me first, Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for being patient with all this. And let me first praise Mr. Jonathan Rogers for his brave, compassionate assistance to Carol Glover. You know, the last year has been a difficult one for race relations in our country. And the powerful symbolism of a young white man showing such great love and courage for an older African-American woman in need is an inspiration to us all and a true sign of progress as our multiracial community heals and evolves. So, Mr. Rogers, thank you. I really only have one question for Mr. Mills, but I would like to begin reading parts of two letters I received from constituents and also ask for unanimous consent that both letters be submitted for the record. The first is from Gary Matz, writing on behalf of himself and his wife, Lynette. And these are just excerpts. The very short answer is that we did not see any emergency assistance as we came out of the station. To go back, we were evacuated off the train and walked along the catwalk back to the station. We were struck by how quiet the station was. No people, except for those being evacuated from the train. We proceeded up the escalators. We were met by a single Metro official at the top of the escalators who was directing traffic outside. We exited the station and saw a bus and perhaps one or two fire trucks. We remember seeing very few, if any, people. I remember kind of shrugging my shoulders and telling Lynette, let's find a taxi and go home. I had fully expected to be met by an organized team of people, medics or first responders or whatever. This was not the case. We did not see any organization, nor were we met by anyone. We simply came out to the street, surveyed the scene, noticing a few vehicles, and then decided just to go home. Another letter came from Mark McKeegan and about his son, Paige McKeegan, and one of his classmates, Joey Peterson. They are here today. We both would stand just that we're here. Let me read. Thousands of parents entrust the safety of their children to WMATA every day as they commute to and from schools. My son, Paige, and 5 of his Gonzaga classmates were on the second-to-last car of that fateful Metro train. You can imagine my concern when I received an unexpected text from them at 3:41 that day that simply said, I love you, Dad. Those boys thought they might die. Mercifully, the boys are okay, but they took it upon themselves to abandon the train. They determined which side of the train was farthest from the third rail and pulled the doors open. Using flashlights from their cell phones, they crept through the smoky tunnel to the platform at L'Enfant Plaza. Page reported that when they got to the platform, they saw a number of firemen standing there. No one asked the boys where they had come from or how they got off the train. When they got to the street, their faces were covered with soot and smoke, and no one approached them. The boys reported that after about 30 minutes of staying on the dark and smoky train, they decided to take matters into their own hands. I can at least partially understand the confusion in the tunnel, but why was there so little support for the passengers who made it off the train and back to the station? Where were the medical personnel, EMTs, fire support, even traffic cops? We had another constituent call us and tell us that he was put on a bus at the station to the hospital, that the bus had no police escort and took over an hour to get to GW Hospital. So we've had lots of attention on fans and cables and radios and alarms and evacuation protocols, but aren't we looking at massive failures of the simple emergency and medical response for the people who made it safely back to L'Enfant Station? So, Chief Mills, I have great difficulty reconciling your account of all the first responders arriving with the personal accounts of the survivors. Chief.
With that particular station, there are multiple exit points. The majority of the people we had exiting the station were at the 7th and D location and near the HUD building. That's where we had set up our treatment and triage areas, because that's where the largest contingent of people were coming out. There were other exits at the Virginia Avenue station that we initially had responders there, but they weren't receiving anybody, and to be able to have enough personnel to treat the large number of individuals that were coming out of the other entrances, we had to redeploy those resources to other locations. And I can't explain for, or I don't know where everybody exited the station because of the multiple exits for that station.
Something to think of. One more question. Mr. Downey, has Metro made any plans to follow up on the middle and long-term health impacts of the smoke inhalation on all the passengers? You know, some went to the hospital right away, but we know now about the toxic chemicals from the burned cables that were in the smoke. So what are we going to do about the possible continuing health concerns of those people that were on the train?
I'm not aware of any, but I will get back to you on that. We do have, as part of our protocol, family assistance programs. When people have been injured on the system, we follow through with the families, but we need to check on that issue. I know it was an issue at the World Trade Center after 9/11. Conceivably, it could be an issue here.
I thank the gentleman. I want to go ahead. We have a 911 call or recording. Could you go ahead and cue that up, and let's listen to that.
Monday, January 12, 2015, 15:39 and 41 seconds.
Office of Unified Communications, DC 911 operator.
Line train going to Huntington, and the train is smoke. There's evidently L'Enfant Plaza. They're trying to back us out.
Hey, this is, hello, I barely can understand what you're saying. This is DC Police.
Yes, I understand. I'm on a train. I'm on the Washington Metro system on a yellow train going to Huntington. We're in a tunnel between L'Enfant Plaza and Archives. Are we? The train is filling with smoke. And can you hear me?
Where are you located, ma'am?
Third train, yellow line going to Huntington.
Okay, are you still in D.C.?
We're outside L'Enfant. We're out Plaza in the tunnel. In the direction of Virginia. Going towards Virginia. Going towards Huntington. They're trying to back. The train is filling with. It's not moving. They're not. Yeah. We've been on the train for about 30 minutes. It's continuing to fill with smoke.
Okay, and you're at L'Enfant Plaza at this time?
No, we have left L'Enfant Plaza. We're in the tunnel. Train lock. We just left the station. They need to pray.
Hold on.
I think you get the point. Congress really, there's a law in place that says that we had to have cell phone coverage in these tunnels, and it's been put off because of the 2009. You got a waiver from Congress, but yet here we are in 2015 and still no 911 callability. Mr. Rogers, did you try to make a call or text to your family?
Yeah, I did try to text my wife, and it didn't work.
So it wasn't successful?
No.
So here we are in 2015, still not only with this event, but a major event. And Mr. Downey, that's something that we're going to have to address.
Yeah, could I respond on that?
Sure.
We welcomed Congress's action in asking this be done. The next step was to get the communications carriers together, form a consortium to do the installation. They have been at it for a number of years. To date, all of the stations have been brought online. Cell service is available in the stations. It is not yet complete within the tunnels. Within the last year or so, unfortunately, the consortium that they created to do this work went bankrupt, causing a considerable delay. The carriers are now working again to put a vehicle in place to deliver this. We'll make the tunnels available and the time available to make it happen, but it has been a long and complicated process. It made worse by virtue of the bankruptcy.
Committee with that time frame.
We will do that, yes.
Ms. Norton, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I must say the combination of the cell phone coverage and chaos that Representative Beyer described above ground, finally after people had been rescued, is very troubling. And a lot needs to be fixed, but nevertheless, I need to thank all of you for the service that you give Mr. Downey without a penny of compensation. I particularly have to thank Mr. Rogers. You know, you weren't asked a lot of questions because your courage spoke for itself. I'm just pleased and proud to have you as a constituent of the District of Columbia. The Glover families, it hangs over everything we do. This hearing is an inspiration and an impetus. Mr. Downey, let me say that I take it that the fares are not going to be raised, and that WMATA understands that this is no time to raise the fares. I say that understanding that that will put a burden on the jurisdictions. And I need to tell you that I'm trying to help because of a bill I'm introducing that would fix the irrational disparity between tax benefits available to those who drive and those who use Metro, resulting in loss of ridership to Metro. But you do agree that the burden should not be on those who ride the trains, particularly after this accident.
Sure, I certainly agree with you. We had a meeting of the Finance Committee of the Board yesterday to discuss where we go with respect to balancing our budget
I thank you for that. I just, again, with limited time, I have to move on.
Right, but
I need to ask about best practices.
To do it without raising fares.
So we will not be raising fares.
I would hope we do not have to raise the fares.
And I understand it takes a vote of the board. Yeah. I suppose this is really for Mr. Hart. It's about best practices. We've heard, for example, that our firefighters have indeed gone to the tunnel or to the mock cars and the rest. Obviously, they couldn't all go at one time. But I am really wondering if it is enough, whether or not firefighters from the region and Metro workers need to be exposed to real-time exercises in the tunnels so that they are not faced with going into a dark tunnel for the first time. And I thank you, Mr. Mills, and I tell you I have a bias because I'm the great-granddaughter of a firefighter who went to the D.C. Fire Department in 1902. And I tell you, when firefighters go into a smoke-filled tunnel and they don't even know that the third rail is off, and I had it off to those fellas. But I need to know whether that's enough. I bet many of those may have gone to Landover, but I wonder if they had ever been into a tunnel and whether we need real-time exercises in tunnels, recognizing that the trains have to run and that we can't interfere with service, but real-time exercises in the tunnels across the region, not only in the District of Columbia, by firefighters and by WMATA workers. Would that be what would be best practices?
One of our follow-up actions that we've already taken is to establish a schedule looking forward over the next 3 years to hold such drills in each physical part of the system and each.
Now, I'm asking Mr. Hart, really, about whether region-wide, because he's the expert on best practices, is it enough to have a mock tunnel? I'm glad about the mock tunnel and the mock cars. But I'm asking whether best practices wouldn't be to expose the firefighters and the WMATA workers to the tunnels.
Thank you for the question. One of the issues we're looking at in the investigation is the adequacy of the training. We'll be looking at the WMATA's existing training facility, and we'll be determining in the course of the investigation, is that adequate, or does it actually need on-scene training in various scenarios?
That's what I'm asking. And I thank you for looking at that. I'm going to have to, I'd like to ask Ms. Jeter a question. First of all, I must say another hero in this is that conductor who told the people it's not a fire, who kept them calm. I don't know his name, but I'd like to put something in the congressional record for him, as well as for Mr. Rogers, who performed, it seemed to me, as single individuals, way above the cause of duty. I'm very concerned about this issue of a call line. We learned in 2009 that the best practice in airlines and trains is to report safety problems. And apparently that's routinely done, what was not done in WMATA. Now, Ms. Jeter has said, well, yeah, there is a call line, but people still feel retaliation by supervisors if they report a safety issue. Mr. Hart, I need to know how the others are able to do it so that people feel freely to say something happened in an airplane and you need to know this, and yet they feel that there will not be retaliation. And why in the world doesn't that work after the 2009 accident at WMATA?
We've certainly been exploring the success of the near-miss reporting system in aviation has been amazing, but we've certainly been exploring how to share that success with other modes. It has not been as easy in other modes, and the biggest problem is the lack of confidence of the person reporting that it won't be used against, that their report will not be used against them.
Well, Ms. Jeter, why do people think it will be used against them?
Well,
Has it been used against people?
Of course. And we do have a punitive system. So when your disciplinary system or your reporting system has a punitive result, that's what they go to. Now, we have agreed to have a close call reporting system. That's one of the initiatives that the union and WMATA did enter into. But the scope of the reporting system is so small because of the people that can use it. But that still lacks the confidence or the trust that if I go to a non-punitive or anonymous reporting system, that somehow WMATA is not going to know about it, and I'm not going to get into it.
Thank you, Ms. Jeter, and also thank you, Ms. Norton. We've got a couple of minutes over on yours, and they're just calling the last vote here. I want to thank all of our witnesses. What I'm going to do, too, is with agreement with the minority, we're going to leave the record open for 10 days for additional questions that may be submitted by members, and ask you to respond. Thank you so much. We can and we must do better, and appreciate your being part of this hearing today. There being no further business, this joint subcommittee hearing is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.